Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your Saturday afternoon to come and be part of this workshop. Or I like to think of these sessions as creativity salons as much as workshops, because I do have a few, I suppose, pearls of wisdom. I've learned, however, that what we actually have here, we have a group of people, all seasoned creative people, all at different levels in their creative work. I know Cameron, and I know Lenny, and then I know a little bit of Gina. So I know all three are fully engaged in the work that they're doing creatively. And I know that we all share the artist way, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So this is an artist way 3-hour opening workshop. And when I say opening, it's just we're going to just touch on things in the artist way. For those of you who don't know anything about the artist way, we'll offer some of the beginning things for you. And for those of you who are really advanced in the artist way, advanced meaning you've been doing it and you're around it a whole lot. I don't think advanced is the right word. It's not something you advance in, it's something that you have in your life, and it grows a bit more like a garden that you advance in the sense of a career, although it adds to your career. When I do these artist way workshops or artist way gatherings, I don't come with a hard outline prepared. Here's what I know so far. Gina would like for us to go into clusters because part of the tradition is to get to know each other better. So we're going to have some breakout rooms and some, and then I would like to use those breakout rooms with different little exercises from the artist way. But the first thing I would like to do before we do anything else, I would like to ask each of you to give your name and give one word that you connect to the creative work that you do. And I would like for all of you, if you can come on visual, that would be great. I'd like for you to give your name, and then we can also we can see the name on the Zoom call, and then one word that connects to your creativity. And I'd like for everybody to please write those words down. You see, my name is James Navé, but my friends call me Navé because it's more fun to say. It means little turnip or bad movie in French. Some people say it in Spanish, it means vessel. So my word for creativity is duende, Duende. There's a wonderful poet. His name is Federico Garcia Lorca. He wrote an essay titled "The Theory and the Play of the Duende." And duende is something that we all know about. The duende is what happens when you go into a room and you see a woman, maybe in her 60s, and she's surrounded by other flamenco dancers. And the woman in her 60s is obviously the master of the group. And the other dancers, they dance, and they're fine, and they're wonderful, and they're masters. And then this older woman steps up onto the stage, and the music plays, and she stamps one foot and throws her arm in the air and says, "Ole!" And everybody in the room says, "Duende." And so the duende is what disturbs you. The duende is what kind of bothers you a little bit. It's what's under your skin. The duende is what you feel when two great rivers run together, or when you hear a wolf howl, or if you're in a train station late at night, 2 a.m., Grand Central, and you hear this lone saxophone player somewhere in the corner, and it's echoing through Grand Central Station, and there's something inside of you that's disturbed. And then it asks you to dwell in that rich loam of creativity. So that's what the duende is. In Lorca's essay, he says that the angels fly overhead and they bless you, all well and good. The muse will come into you and sometimes will drive you crazy and inspire you to write. But the duende is what disturbs you. And when you make art, if your art has the duende, it just undoes everybody, including the sparrows. I love poetry. I've been in the poetry community for a long time. I started teaching the artist way because of poetry. And in February 1995, I met Julia Cameron. She was teaching a workshop in Boulder, Colorado. And after the workshop, she and a group of people went out to have sushi on the Boulder Mall, if any of you know about Boulder, if you've ever been there. And I went with the crew, and Julia and I sat across from each other and talked about, well, what are you up to? She asked. And I said, oh, I love poetry. I'm involved in the poetry scene. And she said, oh, really? I said, yeah, I like the slam. I'm involved in the poetry slam somewhat. I said, by any chance, do you know Mark Smith? I know you were from Chicago. And she said, oh, yes, I do know Mark. He's a friend of mine. I've slammed at the Green Mill. So it turned out that Julia and I had slammed at the Green Mill, which is the venue for the poetry slammers in Chicago. So I met Julia then, and we started the Artist Way Creativity Camp in Taos, New Mexico. So I worked with Julia for many years teaching the creativity camp, and I learned a lot. And the main thing I learned was that everybody has a great story and everybody's devoted to what they're doing. And that's really, really important. So the thing that I have that maybe the rest of you might not have is I've been involved in this community long enough. So I've heard lots and lots and lots of stories. So I'm a reference for you in terms of where you maybe are with your own work and where other people have been. So you can think of me as a facilitator. You can think of me as a bridge. And I also will tell you that when I wake up every morning, I do my morning pages. I do my artist dates. I go on my walks. Those are things in the artist way. I do wait for the synchronicity to happen. And I also wake up every morning thinking, God, this is a brand new day. And it feels like I'm starting all over again. So that's where I'm coming from with this. And so what I'd like to know now, if you can have everybody give me an indication, how many of you have had no experience at all with the Artist Way? Just put your hands up on the screen, please. So let me give you an overview of what the Artist Way is, and then I will do the breakout session, and then we'll come back and we'll keep moving through the material. So the Artist Way was written by Julia Cameron. It was written in the late 80s, published around 1992, 91. It was published as a self-published book, and it was self-published because the essays in the Artist Way were written by Julia for her creativity cluster group that she was teaching. And the cluster kept the handouts and put them into a pamphlet, and that turned into the book. It was sold, bought, and became a classic on how we can all be more creative. It's called The Artist Way, a spiritual guide to creativity. I'm going to share my screen. And if you get a sense of, just to get a little bit of a sense of this. So this is The Artist Way. These are the chapters in The Artist Way. And if you will notice, for those of you who are new to this, and for those of you who are actually seasoned with this, I noticed a couple of years ago, I thought, the Artist Way and the heroic journey stages match. And so these are the 12 weeks in the Artist Way. And then you'll see the heroic journey stages, also 12 of those. Now, Lenny said she's never finished the Artist Way. Well, Lenny will never finish the Artist Way, nor will anybody else, because the Artist Way is not a proposition to start and finish. The Artist Way is a proposition that we can have in our lives for the rest of our lives. And there's plenty of material there to carry us forward. So what you experience in the Artist Way when you get involved in it, and again, this is for the folks who are beginning, and also a review for those of us who've gone through it. It's practical, and it's all metaphorical as well. So when you start the Artist Way, what the idea behind it is a spiritual guide to higher creativity. Well, why spiritual? Spiritual because when you move through your artistic efforts, answer your artistic callings, it's really easy to connect with a sense of something bigger than you. Is that real? Nobody can prove it, but I believe it is. So when you do your Artist Way work, these are the topics, and they start out safety. You leave the ordinary world. Identity, who are you? Maybe you don't know, but you answer the call to adventure anyway. I'm going to go do this anyway. Then power, third chapter. That's when a lot of people decide to not do it. Oh, I've done 3. I'm not going to do any more. Power, and then when you Feel the power. Maybe you feel the refusal of the call, although you know who you are and you feel safe. Next one's integrity. That's when you meet the mentors. That's when synchronicity starts to happen for you. You've been doing your morning pages. You've been taking your walks. Things are starting to change. Maybe you've met somebody that can really help you along the way. Possibility, you cross the threshold. By week 5, you realize, my God, I can actually do this. There's a lot of possibility here. Don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm going to move on through the threshold. Abundance, week 6. That's when you have your tests, your allies and your enemies. You have your doubts, your fears, your delights. Everything starts to happen in week 6. And then maybe you decide, I'm not going to do anything after week 6. And you pick it up 4 months later. And you come to week 7, 4 months later, and you arrive at connection. And this is when you start to approach the great cave. And then the strength is when you have enough strength to deal with whatever the ordeal is. And often the ordeal is that big question: what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do with my creativity? And after that, week 9, compassion. You start to feel okay. But what happens in compassion is not only do you feel okay, you start to be generous to your friends. So there's a reward there: gifts and self-protection. Once you learn all of the rest of this, you know how to protect yourself. You know how to avoid your crazy makers, and you know how to avoid U-turns and creative U-turns. And so on the road back in the heroic journey, the protagonist has the test. They do that. They find the prize, and now they're headed home. Self-protection and autonomy. You're on your way back home, and in the resurrection, like week 11, you've finally found your way. And then week 12, a sense of faith. You return back to yourself or to your home if you're in a story. And so those are the stages of the artist way. And I just wanted to share that with you. And the main thing that I want to encourage you to think about is that when you do this work is designed to support your lifetime creative work. Here's what I'd like for you to do. When you get in the breakout room, I would like for you to tell your travelers, your fellow, your travelers, the people you're with, give them a story of a time when you felt like you were absolutely happily wallowing in your creativity. And that could be a childhood story. I gave my grandmother years ago a surprise birthday party, and all the ladies from the church came, and she didn't know it was going to happen. And she was so happy. And we made a cake. And, maybe somebody else wouldn't think that was a creative highlight, but that was one for me. So think of a creative success that you've had, and the less complicated, the better. Maybe you ironed 5 shirts and hung them on a rack and thought you had done a great thing. It can be simple or it can be large, something that where you were really full of your creativity and it was very successful. So Gina, would you do the breakout rooms, and we'll take, we'll start with 10 minutes and I'll signal you after
I've
that.
made it a little longer. So what do you think? 3 minutes per person? There's 4 or 5 people in a room.
Okay, let's do 15 minutes then.
Okay, perfect.
So just hang it for 15 minutes. In the artist way, it's designed to help you unblock your creativity. And what I've concluded, or what I'm starting to think now, that the blocks may not be as big as we think they are. Now, I say that fully aware that we lose things, fully aware of all the shit that's in the world, fully aware of how hard a life can be. So I know that there are things that can really stand in the way of us getting things done. That said, I think there's a small percentage of the things that we call blocks are actually blocks in the true sense of actually stopping us. Like, say, for example, if you're older, I'm 71, so I'm older than most of you. Now, and a part of me, when I say that, I don't like to say that because that's a block for me. And it kind of frightens me a little bit to think, oh shit, because I know that there are people on this call who are not 71. And so whatever age you are, there are blocks there. And when I say that, it makes my face feel a little blushed because I'm not ashamed of it, but I know that there's a liability there in a sense, but in terms of perception. And also there are some blocks. I doubt that I would be able to become a war correspondent for The Guardian and go into the conflict regions and cover the wars. I just wouldn't be able to physically do that. Doesn't mean that I can't do other things. So I'm starting to think, and Julia wrote a book called It's Never Too Late to Begin Again. Here it is right here. I just finished a 12-week course. It's never too late to begin again for retirees. And what we realized, gosh, we've all been retired by the pandemic. We've all been knocked out of the saddle in one way or another. And so we are all having to reinvent ourselves. So I'm proposing that the blocks aren't as big as you might think they are. And one of the reasons I wanted you to have the cluster with the successes, I wanted you to see how easy it is to tell a story about something that's successful that you've done. So part of the Artist Way work is it asks you to dive deep into all different kinds of things, like list 20 things you enjoy doing, like rock climbing, roller skating, etc. And then from that list, can you do one of those things this week? And so the Artist Way will ask you to stay really simple and to go easy with yourself and not to load the truck up with too much produce, and so that the axles break. And so that's why I wanted you to start with the successes. So can anybody give me just a couple of other comments about what you learned in the group that you were in? That's absolutely true, related to self-worth and giving ourselves permission. So self-worth, permission. And then there's another word, authority, allowing yourself to be the author of your own story. So indeed, what happens when you work with the Artist Way, and those of you who have done this, you know that what starts to happen quickly is that when you start to do the creative work, like the morning pages, the artist states, and the walks, and you start to do some of these small little exercises, your sense of self-worth starts to increase. Your internal critic, my internal critic is named Little Jimmy, lives on my liver, and he has a high voice like this, and he talks really in funny ways. He says, "Oh, you shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't do this," and he lives on my liver. But when I do creative work, Little Jimmy forgets what to do. He doesn't know what to do anymore because he hasn't seen it. So my self-worth starts to rise. So aside from the really tough stuff, like abuse when you're a child, and in some of the addictions that we have that we really have to struggle with, a lot of our self-worth can be increased dramatically and with great ease if we just drop ourselves into the Artist Way work. So what I'd like to do now, I'm trying to cover as much ground as possible for those of you who are engaged with this. Anybody else, before I go on, anybody else like to make a comment about what you learned in your group teaching this class? But actually it's me, Boris, and by the way, I can fly. Notice no wings. I can fly, not a problem. And I also have a security service. So if you ever need any kind of guarding business, just give me a call. Brothers and sisters, right now, oh golly, all over the world. You didn't know this, but by golly, we have all kinds of things going on. Yes, and I didn't tell you. I also can see through walls. You didn't know that. Check out my scarf. What do you think? Yes, very nice scarf, don't you think? Okay, all right. Simon, I know that you have responsibilities, but you have to defer to the great ones there in your lap. So, okay, we have to dismiss ourselves now. I'm going to make this is called a flying turn. Why, my friends, would Boris, oh, I'm back again. I just can't stay away. Why am I so important? Actually, that was what Boris wanted to ask. Why are stuffed animals so important in this adult world we live in? And I'm using this. I was going to bring Boris in at some point, but I'm so glad Aaron mentioned the stuffed animals, and thank you both, Aaron and Simon, for bringing yours along. I want to lead into morning pages, artist states, and synchronicity. So I'm doing that by saying, why would Boris be so important to us as adults? Why does that matter? And maybe inner child also, just to connect with as adults, people say, I don't ever plan to grow up. And I'll say, hey, wait a minute, you did grow up. You are an adult. Give me a break. You are now an adult. But what we have, that inner child, I've begun to think maybe it's more, can we remain attuned to our childlike sensibilities, which are close akin to our poetic sensibilities? And then thus it feels childlike. And then that's what we start to call our inner child. I'm staying true to the idea of the inner child, but I'm suggesting maybe we expand it a bit. And so thus Boris is always like making comments about my cooking, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's playful. And that's what the artist way is about. Anybody else want to make a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I also think the interesting thing about stuffed animals is like they don't come with any personality or history, or we just our imagination just invests the animal whatever we want it to be. So it's just almost completely a reflection of what we've decided, where in the world you meet people, they are who they are, you don't have control over that, but it's a way that we can sort of act godly in this sense. Okay, so you think they already have their person? Okay.
Oh, are you
I had
kidding?
a teddy bear, and the
Excuse
teddy
me, Gina.
bear was like whatever I wanted it to be.
I'm Boris. I have my own personality. All of our imaginative work does rise up and bubble from inside of us. The flame behind Lori right now, whatever the work that you've done, you are the source. But I suggest that you are not the origin. You're just part of the source. What we're actually doing, I think, is connecting with something much bigger than ourselves here. Now, again, I can't prove that, but I think it might be true. Lori has somebody too. Look at Lori now. They're just coming out everywhere. I'm in no way shying away from the heaviness of the work. I'm no way shying away from the what we as creative people have decided to do. We're taking on a big job here of translating our impulses, our view of the world, the kaleidoscope we look through, into forms that will perhaps be significant for other people. In the poetry world, people say poetry saves lives. And I know there are a lot of people out there in the slam world who didn't shoot themselves because they wrote poetry. So they're not, so, I mean, to just be a little bit coarse here, that, they're not fucking around because they know their lives are at stake. It's a thing for all of us. And it's really, really, really important. And I know that. And yet when when Boris comes out, like right now, and the other animals appeared, we had a lightness, a festivity started to happen. We were more than just serious artists on the call trying to figure out what to do next, but we were just a bunch of children, if you will, playing around a bit, right? Now, again, I think my experience with the artist way is it is all about play, but it is about playing with serious questions that we have chosen to explore throughout our lives. So what I want to do is steer us back a little bit to the artist way proper, because this is an artist way workshop. And what I'd like to do is to cover the basic tools of the artist way, just to remind us about those. And then I would like to do an exercise, not from the Artist Way book. You can pick almost, and this is an old one. And this is a book that Julia wrote in to my mother when she visited Asheville when I first met her. And she says, to Bobby Sue, who's now, my mother's now gone, I heard you had a Jeffersonian mind and thought it might be and you might enjoy some company, Julia Cameron. So she gave her the artist way because Julia was confident enough to think that this will be an enduring classic. And sure enough, all these years later, it is an enduring classic. So there's plenty of material in the artist way to work with. So here's what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask all of you, before we even do any kind of discussion about this or anything, I would like to ask all of you just to stay in the prep of your secret self character, and remember the list that we made earlier in the call when we first started, the one everybody gave their name and gave one word. Do you all still have that? Did you jot those words down? Look around the room you are in and jot down 10 objects you see in the room. Like I see a fan, I see a table, a nail in the wall, a towel. So jot down 10 objects you see in the room and add those objects to the list.
With
Okay. Now you have maybe 10 or so. You still have the room around you. So if you need to look at other objects, it's not as if they've gone anywhere. They'll still be there. So now you have 10 concrete objects, and then you have some abstract ideas like varied or funky or ritual, expression, love, etc. So now I want you to get into the mindset of your secret self, and I want you to take 5 minutes, and I want you to describe yourself as a creative person, as a creative entity, using these words as prompts. So you might say, like James Navé, as in Bond, James Bond might say, the varied duende that excited my electric plug inside my closet turned me into a peaceful expression of life. So I'm just letting my imaginative riff happen. Now that's just Navé being improvisational here. So what I want you to do is just take 5 minutes and write about creativity from the point of view of your secret self, your opinions of it, how you feel about it, and use these words that you have on your list as words that you can drop into the writing. You don't have to use all of them, but just use some of them and see where it goes. And this will be a 5-minute timed writing. And then after that, we'll go into another group, a breakout group, and then you'll read that writing to the group if you so choose. Opening up a little bit more, what have you learned in this time together? And one of the things I try to do when I facilitate these experiences, I try to open it up and keep it as free form as possible, so we teach each other, even though I do have a fair amount to say and can go on and on. That said, we're teaching each other. So what have you learned today about the artist way, and maybe insights into your own creative movement forward? You have to keep, that's why when you wake up every day, it's a starting over, because we have to keep doing this all the time. No matter how far down the line you get, you still have another day to do something in. Anything else anybody wants? Yes, Gina has her hand up.
Yeah, I feel like what I sort of got out of this is there's like creativity. I felt such a positivity from this room. And I just feel like, oh yeah, creativity is like making something from nothing. And it's always kind of like a positive force. So I just noticing the sort of like warmth and positivity coming forth, and that it kind of makes sense, and just thinking about creativity that way. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
Well, thank you. And I want to just read what Amy wrote. This is wonderful, Amy. Thank you for sharing this in the chat. Today was great. Something in me connected to a warrior part of me that I've never really met with such clarity before, implying the warrior part is there. I felt really embarrassed to enjoy that until my breakout room celebrated that secret self in me, and I really appreciated that. Thanks, group. Well done. Well done. Oh, I love this. This is, for those of you who are wondering where this came from, I think I know. Elizabeth Thomas started the Youth Poetry Slam years ago, and the students in the schools would do this when they wanted to encourage, and we first started to see it in the slam, and now you're seeing it everywhere. And I think it's just a perfect way to, it's yes, 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 click, 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 click. So this is for all of us. So we have arrived at the top of our time together. and I want to honor the top of the hour by closing. So just in conclusion, we started by writing our list and giving our names. We concluded by writing some essays and moving into our superpowers, still staying within ourselves. We talked about the idea of the imagination and the rational mind and the imaginative mind dancing together. I hope you have a better sense of how you can carry on with the artist way work. And, there's so much there that it's impossible to cover it in 3 hours. But I hope that we've given you all a green light to say, yes, I can just continue on with this and declare the whole thing a great success. Morning pages, every morning when you get up, write big if you feel like you're in a hurry. Don't even write language if you feel like you want to just draw. Please do that. Synchronicity will emerge. It's out there for all of us. You don't have to worry about it. And when you do your creative work, the universe takes care of you, and you take care of yourself and the community around you. And there's a generosity there. We talked about the duende, the two rivers merging together, and the deep sax player at Grand Central Station, and the artist date. Put yourself on the front burner. And the last thing I'll say about the artist way is, when you decide to do it, make sure you declare everything you do within the time frame you're working a complete and utter success. And just know that you're going to be doing it for as long as you please, and there's no hurry, and take it really, really easy, and go easy on yourself, and you will go easy on all of the people around you. And I think one of the words that was offered was love. And at the end of the day, there's a little bit of love going on around the room. And if we could just have a little bit of that, and care about each other, support each other. And I'd like to thank Gina for putting this together, a ton of hard work. And I'd like to thank my good friend Cameron, whom I've known for many years. And I feel like, we're brothers. And the one time somebody said I was Cameron's mentor, but now Cameron's taught me so much that I believe the scales have balanced. And that's what happens when we do creative work. Balance scales, harmony, love, caring, and who knows what's to come. So thanks everybody for time together. And now you can go to sleep if it's late at night where you are.